Welcome to Virtual Learning and Virtual Schools with Group 3. This is Kristen, Kartov, Jason, and Carla. We're going to be talking to you today a little bit about our findings from our research. First, we'd like to provide an overview for what this presentation will cover. We're going to be talking a little bit about what virtual schools and virtual learning are, who's involved. We're going to be talking about some K-12 differences, the Khan Academy as a specific case study. We'll be going over benefits and limitations of virtual learning and virtual schools, and that will also include some things like budget considerations, technology considerations, student characteristics, and staff considerations. We also will be talking about the educational applications and sort of the future, what it might look like for virtual learning and virtual schools. We first thought it would be important to provide a definition, so I'm going to give you just a second here to read through this to see sort of what the, published definition is that's out there. We thought this was pretty important to include because there, of course, are different types of virtual learning. Some are programs, some are schools, and there are some differences. So we thought by providing sort of a definition, it could help frame a little bit for how you see and how you think about this presentation. So specifically, virtual schools in Michigan. As I began my research, I wanted to see if I could find out exactly how many virtual schools we had in the state of Michigan, and I had a little bit of difficulty in running this query because virtual schools are actually coded the same as traditional schools in the state's data system. Therefore, it was pretty difficult to know. Yes, an ambulance did just go by, but we're okay. So back to the presentation. Virtual schools are coded the same as traditional schools in the state's data system. So it was really difficult as I tried to do a query to find out some more information about virtual schools. I ran into some problems. Unless a school had cyber, online, or virtual in the name itself, it's impossible to know if a school is a traditional sort of public school or if it's a virtual school. So I based my query using these three keywords, and what I found was that there are 13 virtual schools in operation across the state, and there are seat time waivers that have to go into place for virtual schools, and there are some other conditions, but basically they operate similarly, except that students, of course, don't come to a physical location. Some things to point out that were important about these 13 virtual schools. Out of the 13, 10 of them, and I'm quoting here, provide alternative education programs to suspended and or expelled students from the home districts and other school districts. So this was pretty critical. If we're looking at 13 virtual schools and 10 of them are an alternative setting for students that were unsuccessful, suspended or expelled in a traditional district, we thought that was a pretty important factor in understanding who some of the students that attend virtual schools, at least today in Michigan, actually are. It's also important to note that most of these virtual schools operate within a traditional public school district, so they're just another option, another opportunity for students to access. Basically, there are two groups of the virtual schools. I touched on one already, but we have a few schools that provide general education and special education for students, or we have the virtual schools that provide alternative education for students. And all of these schools are newly open, relatively speaking, with the earliest school opening in the fall of 2009. This is a pretty important point to keep in mind as we continue on talking about the future of virtual schools. So the three schools that provide general education, we have the Virtual Learning Academy of St. Clair County, and they were opened in fall of 2009. We have the Berrien Springs Virtual Academy. They opened in the fall of 2010. And later in one of the discussion threads, we're actually going to have you click on a YouTube sort of promotion video that Berrien Springs Virtual Academy created, and have you consider some things based on not only what you learned in the presentation, but what's presented in that particular video. And lastly, we have the Michigan Virtual Charter Academy, which opened in the fall of 2010, which you'll learn about a little bit more in depth later in the presentation. The alternative education virtual schools are listed here. And you can see that all of these, with the exception of Westwood Cyber High School, all of these open in 2010 or later, or as the last three on the list indicate, they're scheduled to open this fall. So again, going back to that relatively new piece, you can see that the growth for virtual schools and virtual learning is growing at a very rapid rate. And I'm sure, as we'll see, it's going to continue in that direction. So the interesting thing is, although we see this somewhat exponential growth, there actually isn't enough data yet. Because they're so new, the research that exists exists by the companies that are I guess helping fund or helping promote some of these schools, or they're the programs that might be in schools and they're conducting their own research. So there is very little non-biased research about the effects of virtual schools and virtual learning in Michigan. Additionally, it's going to be a little bit difficult to tell the true effect of virtual learning and virtual schools, primarily because of the population. We're talking 10 of our 13 schools serve an alternative population. It's important to keep in mind that these are students that weren't traditionally successful in school. So thinking about what might be normal success or what that might look like, it could be hard to measure, and it could be very difficult to understand how well they're serving their populations. But despite the lack of research, the governor and the state superintendent believe strongly in the philosophy of anywhere, anytime, anyplace education. So it's highly likely in the state of Michigan that the number of virtual schools and the number of students they serve will continue to increase.
So next we took a look at some accredited programs, and also we'll take a look later at the Khan Institute, which is not an accredited program. The first accredited program that we took a look at was the Michigan Virtual School, and there's a link here for you to go take a look for yourself. They hire certified Michigan teachers, and interestingly, they were funded by the legislature in 2000. They are a public school. They aren't a charter school like some of the other organizations that we'll take a look at in a little bit. They focus on middle and high school students, and any student in the state can enroll in this school for free. Public schools can add students to the caseload of the Michigan Virtual School for a fee ranging from $89 to $350 per student per class. Out-of-state schools can take advantage of the Michigan Virtual School as well. Their costs are slightly higher. They marketed their program as to school districts as a way to expand their curriculum and allow access to classes that they can't offer in their local schools. Students can only take 2 courses per semester and must attend at least 1 course at the school to receive their school membership. So it's not a program where kids can just kind of rush through. They have to go through it at a regular course. Interestingly as well, it says that the students must be able to read at the 6th grade level as a prerequisite. So we're probably not going to see a lot of our special education or kids that are very behind the ball attending the Michigan Virtual School. Next, we have the Michigan Virtual Charter Academy. They're chartered by Grand Valley State University. They are a K-12 program. Again, they use Michigan certified and highly qualified teachers. Again, I love that song. They use any student in Michigan can join this program with no tuition. They do not, from what I saw, offer their services to districts, just to the kids that are coming in. Again, this is a charter academy, not a public school. They use the K-12 curriculum, which is a nationwide curriculum that a lot of the academies, the online courses, are using. They offer 4 levels of classes, all the way from core to AP. Um, it was interesting to me as I was researching through this that if you enroll for this class, they will send you all the materials that you need for the class, including microscopes if that's what they're using. So it'll come to your front door. It's a school in a box for you. Um, and for students that are in need, they can also provide a computer and an internet stipend. And then finally, a non-accredited program, the Khan Academy. This is a nonprofit organization, 100% free to anyone to join as long as they have a Facebook or a Google login, which may be a problem depending on your school's internet filters. Um, this is a library of over 2,000 videos covering anything arithmetic, history. It really is just a wealth of information. In addition to the videos that they have these practice exercises that you progress through in a progressively more difficult manner. The whole program, the software package tracks students' use of the program and how they're going. So you can actually log in as a coach if you have all of your students log in too, and you can see how they're progressing through the program, how much time they've had, what objectives they're meeting, and which ones they're not. And the students actually earn badges as a type of reinforcement, and they're cleverly named badges, and they're kind of fun to try to get. After researching it a little bit, I am officially addicted to it and spend way too much time trying to earn. So this is an example of what the data looks like. This would be a class level data, and it's days working on the site, and the number of modules completed. So this would be something that a teacher would be able to see, understanding if their students are making progress across the program. And then finally, at the student level, students can see how they're doing. They map out their it's not really their curriculum, but their sequence of videos in a very unique way. It communicates why the kids are learning what they're learning. As you complete a module, it opens up new modules to you and branches out, so you can kind of see how things are all connected. It's a really fun program, and if you get a chance, I think you should take a look at it.
All right, and over here, we'll continue on with non-accreditation schools. In adult education within Detroit Public Schools, our accreditation is determined based off our funding from the state, from DLEG. Right now, you're looking at a slide where we have data from two of the Detroit Learning Labs, which is a state initiative project by Governor Granholm and Andrew Levin back in 2009. There are 10 learning labs positioned all over the city of Detroit, and Detroit Public Schools Adult Education has two of them. Now, the main target goal of this is just to provide computer access to those community members that don't have a PC or any type of technology at their home or access to a local library. If you take a look at the purpose down below, the first purpose is to develop knowledge of hardware equipment and computing skills. Some of the labs focus more on that, which is typing, spelling, and different functions. The other purpose is to provide employment research, which means for those unemployed, they can have an opportunity to look through jobs, update the resume, and go through various workshops. The third one is what the two of our learning labs in adult education deals with, and that's in order to receive a GED. Now, software applications such as Contemporary GED from McGraw-Hill and Skills Tutor are the two types of applications we use for our program. Okay, and the statistics from this past year, out of 110 registered students at one of our locations, 22 received their GEDs in 2011, and that's with the help of the Detroit with the Learning Lab software. 35 graduates from the regular GED classrooms, which is state funded, is used Skills Tutor, the English and mathematics for graduation credits. This lab helped increase low-level reading skills. So, for example, if you came in at a 4th grade level, and by the end of the year, many of our students were reading at a 6th grade level. So the use of this, and this is according to the TABE score, which is the test for adult basic education. So the software applications here have shown somewhat of a progress in terms of their reading levels.
Now we're going to move on to budget considerations. There is very low overhead for a virtual or cyber school, whether it be K-6, middle school, or high school. In one model that was followed after a not school from the UK, we found that very few staff was needed. There was one director, 10 project managers, and 4 technicians. Mentors were paid hourly and would follow the students, and students would check in. All of the projects that students would complete were created by the content experts, which would double as project managers and would be teachers that were certified in subject and content areas. These teachers were not unionized, so that made the program very affordable. All students needed computers, internet connectivity, and the teachers also needed to be trained. So that took minimal budget for each one. But this program was for at-risk students, so home visits were very important. To make the experience important for kids, there was also an idea of athletics. So there is an alternative athletic association again that was a minimal cost. Staff experience.
All right, staff experience. Due to numerous research articles we have taken a look through, some of the positive staff experiences include that teachers were able to increase interaction with students, which improves academic achievement. Other benefits were the subject material, whether it's social studies, English, or math, was made easier to learn due to the heavy interaction between the teacher and the student due to the activities. Also, online instructional applications allowed for differentiated instruction, which keeps the teachers more motivated in personalizing their lesson plans. And also, learning can continue outside of the classroom with the use of podcasts, websites, blogs, and other types of technological applications. This will also always help reinforce the subject material.
The student experience. The students will have to complete projects and be current with all of their work, and the mentor would also help keep up with things like that. The the benefit for students in an experience like this is that they would have a mentor that would be available to them 24 hours a day. Somebody will be available for chat and content expertise at all hours, and also a special ed student would also have live chat time for face-to-face exposure via Skype or other means. Students are also required to collaborate with other peers on their content. Why students choose virtual? There are many reasons why a student may choose to go the pathway of a virtual school. And it also contributes to the success of a student. Not everybody learns in a traditional way, so this avenue will help a student, whether it be due to teenage pregnancy, um, uneasiness in a traditional school with so many students. There was an example of one student who was very uncomfortable in a traditional high school who came to a virtual school with a 1.5 grade point average and ended up scoring a 28 on her MME and chose to be more successful in this learning environment. So sometimes it's just the environment in which a student learns that will help them to be successful. Student achievement. This is an example of student achievement in one district with the traditional high school and the virtual high school, where the virtual high school students outscored the traditional high school in every area of the MME.
Alright, now we're going to dwell into the limitations of using technological applications. First, we're going to take a look at staff considerations. If you take a look at the 2 bullet points over here, now we all know that as technology advances, we need more and more professional development for these technological equipments to use. So training is required for all staff members preparing to use any instructional applications, and it is up to the school to set up those professional development dates. Another thing to consider is that with veteran teachers that may lack technological skills, such as using computers, laptops, or instructional software, um, extensive professional development might be needed to further advance their skills and mastery of the technology. So it's always important to have additional time and sufficient time for those older teachers that may not possess the technological skills. And now we look at 2 student considerations. So these are just some of the limitations as well and things you need to be concerned about when using technological applications in the classroom. Okay, first we look at technology facilitators must always establish rules and policies for using any type of hardware or software. This is very important for all schools because you always want to teach your students, responsibility and safety and care for the equipment. Consequences must be explained for any misuse or abuse. Possibly you might need some student contracts before any type of instruction takes place using an iPad or an iPhone or a laptop or anything. And the most important thing is consistent monitoring by the teachers or other staff is always critical when students are using any technology, because you always want to make sure that that they're doing the assignment, doing the right thing, and also you want to make sure that learning is going on. So when you're using technology, make sure to please reinforce all classroom content instructions. Assessments might be conducted or should be conducted to show student learning. And now we dwell into the future of virtual learning. Okay, many virtual learners are Atlas learners and need more motivation. So we said that 2 hours of required lab time a week will be required to promote success. And if you take a look at the right, the use of more Skype applications, video chat, or any type of Winba type classroom, which allows for more interaction and face-to-face interaction time. And if you look at the bottom, there's some links for universities that are specifically for online accreditation degree programs. You have Kaplan, Phoenix, St. Leo, and Everest. These days, more and more high school graduates or even professionals that are going back to school for their masters are attending online accreditation programs. And this statistic alone, if you click on the links on the right, will show you the requirements or the extensive use of technology within a K through 12 district. And to conclude, these are just some of our references that we browsed through, and these are some of the articles you might want to take a look at and read on your own time. So we just included them on this slide, and I believe there's a video link on one of them.